Kill me then, Emperor. Better to die in freedom's twilight than draw breath at the dawn of tyranny. May the gods grant me my last wish, that my spirit lingers long enough to laugh when your faithless kingdom at last falls apart. And Daival Shan, Terran separatist warlord, at his execution. If a man gathers 10,000 sons in his hands, if a man seeds 100,000 worlds with his sons and daughters, granting them custody of the galaxy itself, if a man guides 1,000,000 vessels between the infinite stars with a mere thought, then I pray you tell me, if you are able, how such a man is anything less than a god. Lorgar Aurelian, Primarch of the Word Bearers. There is no surer sign of decay in a country than to see the rights of religion held in contempt. Niccolo Machiavelli, ancient Eurasian philosopher. Prologue. The Grey Warrior. His sisters wept when the Legion came for him. At the time, he couldn't understand why. There was no greater honor than to be chosen, so their sorrow made no sense. The Grey Warrior's voice was a machine's rasp, deep and laden with static as he spoke from behind a death mask. He demanded to know the boy's name. Before the mother answered him, she asked a question of her own. It was her way to stand straight and strong, never to be bowed by the things she saw. It was a strength she had passed on to her son, and would stay in his blood despite the many changes to come. She asked the question with a smile. I will tell you his name, warrior. But first, you will tell me yours. The Grey Warrior looked down upon the family, meeting the eyes of the parents only once before he stole their child. Erebus, he intoned. My name is Erebus. Thank you, Lord Erebus. This is my son, she gestured to her boy. Argel Tal. Fast angels. I can remember the day of judgment. Can you imagine looking up and seeing the stars fall from the sky? Can you imagine the heavens themselves raining fire upon the world below? You say you can picture it. I don't believe you. I'm not speaking of war. I'm not speaking of Prometheum's stinging oil scent or the burning chemical reek of flames born from missile fire. Forget battle's crude pains and the sensory assault of orbital bombardment. No, I am not speaking of mundane savagery, the incendiary ills men inflict upon other men. I speak of judgment, divine judgment, the wrath of a God who looks upon the works of an entire world, and what he sees turns his heart sour. In his disgust, he sends flights of angels to deliver damnation. In his rage, he seeds the skies with fires, and it rains destruction upon the upturned faces of 6 billion worshippers. Now tell me again. Tell me again that you can imagine seeing the stars fall from the sky. Tell me you can imagine heaven weeping fire upon the land below, and a city burning so bright that all sight is scorched from your eyes as you watch it die. The day of judgment stole my eyes, but I can still illuminate you. I remember it all. And why wouldn't I? It was the last thing I ever saw. They came to us in sky-born vultures of blue and iron with white fire, and they called themselves the Eighth Legion, the warrior kings of Ultramar. We did not use those names. As they marched us from our homes, as they butchered those who dared fight back, and as they poured divine annihilation upon everything we have built, we called them false angels. You came to me asking how my faith survived the day of judgment. I will tell you a secret. When the stars fell, when the seas boiled and the earth burned, my faith didn't die. That is when I began to believe God was real and he hated us. Excerpted from The Pilgrimage by Cyrene Valention. I always say her name wrong. But hey, friends, it's me, the chaos loving ebony otaku, the well-rounded nerd in her kingdom of nerdiness, and her annoyed dog on the floor. I felt like reading. And what's funny is that this is a real-time video, because I'm in the middle of masters. I can't like record 20 videos ahead. I ain't got that kind of time. I have to record after work, and I'm rearranging a lot of my after work schedule now because I want to do more SCA stuff. But like literally, I'm recording this the night before it's going up because I literally just finished writing paper. It's 9 p.m. I feel like being brainless. So I read the first Heretic. um, it's from the Horus Heresy. Let me make sure I tell you exactly which book in order this one is. So many. It's pretty close to the beginning. It is number 14 out of 35 books. It's not even the middle. So the first Heretic is written by Aaron D. Bowden. Sorry, Aaron. I tried. I don't want to butcher your name. It's the Fool to Chaos. Look at this cover, will ya? Have you seen my Titan? He's wood. He bears the word. His name is the Bane of Monarchia. He's the vengeful spirit that arose from the ashes of the perfect city to seek righteous vengeance upon the sons of Ultramar. Anyway, lore. We loves the lore. Um, um, I always come back to Lorgar. It's funny because my legion that I play is the Emperor's Children. I had in my head that I was going to have like 4 armies. No, we're just going to keep expanding the Emperor's Children. I do have a blueberry contingency. My first set of Warhammer figures I completed are a Wordbearer's kill team, and they are beautiful. And the Bane of Monarchia is in Wordbearer's colors. He is beautiful. Will I ever paint anything else Wordbearers? Yes, I also have Lorgar, Demon Lorgar. But at the Con of Adepts here in March, I shall be looking for 2 particular models. There's only 2 models I want if I find them, and that would be a Lorgar and a Vulcan. And I'll have all the Primarchs that I love. The other half of my Heresy box is going to be a Salamander army when I get to it. And that would really be for the purpose of people playing against me, for learning games. So, but I have enough models right now that I could do like word bearers and blueberry. I could put together something funny for someone to play. But I would like to have a loyalist. My main army is Heretic, but I would like to have a loyalist contingency, so that I can help people learn to play. So yeah, project. But I'm rearranging my schedules to be more focused on some newer hobbies that I have, like SCA and gaming. Yay. Anywho, back to the book. So I've been doing peek into my world. So I don't think I've ever hidden it. I say it every time, but I don't hide that she's a Christian. She believes in God. She believes in Jesus. Yay. Do I require you to? No. That's between you and God. What you believe is between you and what you believe. I'm not in charge of that. And I'm going to get a little bit into my history as to why I'm going to talk to you about why I rocks so much and I tend to understand Lorgar. I love Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children for the ridiculousness. They out there, they doing the most. They are doing Fulgrim. Okay, Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children are like somebody who got out of a really bad relationship and just finally had the freedom to go do whatever they wanted. And then they went too far. Like that's them. They just out there like woohoo. They're doing the most. They're dancing on tables. They're at the Coyote Ugly. Like they're kicking bottles. Like it's a good time. Um, Lorgar, though, for me, represents a portion of life that if you grew up in a religious culture, and I'm not even talking about like Christian church, I mean religion of any kind. I pick one. um, that can happen to a lot of us. And while Fulgrim with his crazy children are my favorite portion of the lore, the Primarch that I identify with the most is Lorgar. The writers in the Black Library are so clever in how they've set up this universe because the 20 Primarchs are there so that each of us can find those identifying features that either we think represent us or that we want to represent us, the things we may aspire to, the things we might despise, whatever it is. But there's a connection there. Two Nobel Prizes have actually been won, showing that people make decisions first based on emotion and then facts. You don't believe that? Look at your social media feed. um, but because of that, we get emotionally attached to certain characters, and usually that's because we identify with them in some way. And Lorgar is the one for me. Why? I'm gonna tell you. So I live in the South. I'm from the South, born and raised. I am a true Southerner, y'all. Let me tell you, I love where I live. I do. I love being Southern. I'm cook. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying I can better. um, I love our slower pace of life, even though I'm super busy. Like, who knows how to take a nap on a Sunday afternoon is me. I love our friendliness. I love that we will stop traffic if we see somebody coming down the street the other way to roll down our window and say hey, and you're rude if you don't say hey back. Um, I love the weather here, except when it's either tornadoes or 900 degrees outside. Other than that, it's great. Um, I love the scenery here. I love rolling hills and tall trees and mountains. Not like the deserty mountains. We have tree covered mountains here. Don't The mountains on the East Coast and the mountains on the West Coast do not look the same. Both are beautiful. It's just a different kind of beauty. They have more rocky mountains. We have the Appalachians. That's why they're called the Rockies. They're rocky. The Appalachians are very coniferous, not carnivorous, coniferous, tree covered. um, I love how we show up for one another. You know, and I love our accent. And when I've had to go teach in other countries over the years, especially when I've gone to England, it's been really funny because people want to hear the accent. And I can actually, in America, like right now, the way I'm speaking, I'm doing this on purpose. I can mask it pretty well. I was a theater and English major in college. So we were trained on how to drive our homegrown accents out of our vocalizations so that you can adapt to whatever you need to for whatever role you get. But I have a Nashville, Tennessee accent. It's here. But my accent versus an Alabama accent versus an Atlanta accent, a Memphis accent, they're all different. They're very nuanced. It's the difference between a Boston and a New York accent. They're not the same. And then, like, if you're from the Bronx or Queens, it's still not the same. Like, I'm from Tennessee, but I'm from Nashville. A Nashville accent is like a pinky up Southern accent. Like Louisiana, and then like in Louisiana, you got Creole and everything else. That's very like old money kind of Southern accent. Like, like the Nashville, we're like the metropolitan, like new money Southern accent. And Louisiana is that old established money accent that is wiping its nose with a $50 bill kind of accent. And Atlanta is this kind of like Atlanta is like the most northern city in the South, if that makes sense. Like if you are from like a LA, and I've been to all these places, like but if you're from like a Chicago and LA or New York, you'll be right at home in Hotlanta. So it's probably the fastest the Southern accent. I love everything about being a Southerner. I really do. I know we got a weird history. Look, you do too. Okay, find me a perfect history out there. You can't. Be thankful for what is and learn from what was. And, don't make problems where they don't exist. Solve the problems that actually are. That's all I'm saying. Um, but a big part of Southern culture, especially in the United States, a lot of prevailing church culture came out of the Northeast, Puritan culture, and then the isms, the schisms of the churches, and then in the South, remember that whole North South thing? Two very distinct church cultures developed. Now, granted, down here in the South, we had the Baptist and the Shakers. We do have a huge Amish and Mennonite community down here. You want the best butter and jam you ever had, you need to find yourself an Amish shop. I'm just saying. Um, Good stuff. Um, but the part of the country where I'm from is literally called the Bible Belt because there's churches everywhere. Everywhere. If you've never been to the South, like granted up north, like think about Boston. I've had to go to Boston for work a few times, and it's a cool city. I've wandered all over Boston, had a great time, eating a lot of clam chowder. Um, they have all these like old, beautiful, like colonial and Gothic churches. Some of them look like they're more museum than actually in use. Like they're just gorgeous. Some of the most beautiful architecture humans have created is in service of religion. Don't believe me? Like open a book. Um, but down here in the South, the isms and the schisms just kept isming and schisming. But the heart of social life, family life, education, very much centered around a religious culture. The biggest denomination in the South, other than Catholicism, because Catholicism is everywhere, would be Baptist. What flavor of Baptist? I don't know. There's a bunch. There's the Anabaptist. There's the Free Will Baptist. There's the Missionary Baptist. There's the Southern Baptist. There's a Primitive Baptist, a bunch of Baptists. But like, you'll be like if you're driving through a very small town, I'm not kidding, like a town way out, like, think of Nashville. Get 40 miles out of Nashville in these little bitty towns. You will see church, gas station, church, school, church, store. Like when I say there are churches everywhere, and the predominant church is going to be Baptist churches. You will see, oh hey, there's a Church of Christ. One version of Baptist, two version of Baptist, three version of Baptist, and maybe Catholic or Methodist. So but either way, church culture everywhere. When I say church culture is life, I went to a Baptist school growing up, a private Baptist school. So I didn't go to that church. We went to a different church growing up. So I went to like a tambourine shaking, falling in the spirit black church growing up. And I went to a conservative, ultra conservative Baptist school. And then when I got to be a teenager, went to the same kind of tambourine shaking, tongue talking church, but it was predominantly Caucasian, but a very much mixed background and ethnicity. So interesting combination of experiences. Um, but in school, I went to chapel every single week, which meant I had to. We had a school-wide Bible lesson every week. Every grade had chapel every week. Every morning we said the Pledge of Allegiance. Every to the no, you think I mean to the flag? Yeah, to a couple of flags. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States flag, then the Christian flag. You didn't know there was a Christian flag? There it is. Have you seen that white flag with a little blue thing and the cross? That's it. It looks very much like this from the Taekwondo mission I used to be a part of. Um, and then the Bible every day. Every day. I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for which it stands. One Savior, crucified, dead and buried, risen and coming again, with life and liberty for all who believe. Life and liberty? Anyway, I'm getting to my point. So the school was very small. I think the most students that were ever there while I was going there was probably the year I was in like fourth to sixth grade, and maybe the whole school had 300 kids in it. My eighth grade class, there were 10 kids. We were such a small class, a lot of us are still connected on social media. And when we happen to crisscross the country, we still make time 40 years later to go see one another, 30 years later. I went to the same school from kindergarten to eighth grade, from 4 years old to 13. Yeah, me being 13 in high school is a whole other set of stories. But um, so we were able to get very direct education, on the things we did, but everything we did in that school was through the lens of Christianity, through the lens of Southern Baptist Christianity. So when we were getting lessons, it was always through that filter. But there was nothing that we did that was outside of that. How does that affect you? Okay, get ready to get your pitchforks out. I'm just telling you a story. I'm not trying to make you mad. I'm just letting you know this is just a thing that happened. Can't change it. But when I got into the fifth grade, that was the history year. There was a teacher who everyone was excited to get because she was the history teacher, and she, like, everything she did. Like, we learned math, but mostly history in that class. Like, we did like 5 little plays we did for our parents. We went to every historical site in Nashville, Tennessee: Carter House, Carton Mansion, the Hermitage. We went on a scavenger hunt in a historical graveyard. It was a whole thing. She loved history. She was great. But one thing she was really good at was just letting us talk things out when we were discussing things that happened in history. Yes, a bunch of fifth graders having a theological and political debate about things that happened in our country. That is one of the freedoms of a little bitty private school. It's only a step above homeschooling, let's be real. But I came out brilliant, so it's fine. um, but we did get to the part of history eventually where we talked about the Civil War. Do you know what happened during the American Civil War? Do you know what it was about? It's why I'm free. That's the summary. But here's where um, religion being so ingrained in you without context, without your own learning. Because you have to remember, children are going to be whatever religion they're raised to be and believe what you tell them to. If a child is born to a Muslim country, chances are that child's going to be Muslim. If a child is born in the Far East, there's a chance they're going to be Buddhist or Shinto. Um, if they're in Korea, probably Methodist or Presbyterian. Um, in America, could be anything. Um, if they are born in Europe, good chance they're going to be Catholic or Anglican. That we are products of our environment, and when we're children, we believe what we're told to believe because we haven't gotten to a point in life where we are testing what we know to see if it's true. We're just doing and believing and mimicking what we're told because that's what childhood is. You don't get your own independent thought until later in life. So we get to the part where we're talking about slavery. And there are verses in the Bible that do talk about the relationship between followers of Christ to Christ and God as a master slave relationship. We're not going to talk about translations right now. We know that's an issue. That's not the point. How about I had been so well indoctrinated into believing certain things about the master slave relationship that my 9-year-old black self remembers arguing about the merits of being a slave and being taken care of versus being free. Church was my school. Church was my social life. Church is what I did on the weekends. I didn't grow up playing sports. I played one sport in eighth grade, and that was basketball. I grew up doing church stuff. I didn't run track. I didn't do martial arts when I was young. I didn't do that till I was 18. And I was grown and made my own choices and had my own car. Um, yeah, let that sink in. But when every morning you're pledging the allegiance to God and country, literally, to the Bible, you don't really understand what any of that means. And you're thinking about it from the perspective of what you're told, and you haven't had enough life experience to tell you to think or feel differently or to explore deeper. I wasn't reading works by church fathers and their analysis of things. I was 9. you know? Um, I wasn't looking to see what Martin Luther wrote in his 95 Theses. I didn't know who John Calvin was. I didn't know that the Puritans probably have some of the best early church writing that exists, because we call them Puritans because they were pure. They tried to keep to the Bible as closely as they could and not twist it. I hadn't made it to that point in my life. I just knew that from the way I was being raised and what I was being taught, that all of that meant that maybe being a slave wasn't so bad, because if I'm going to be a slave to Christ, then maybe being an actual slave here wasn't so bad, because at least you get to eat. You know where you're going to be every night. Yeah, be horrified. Do I think that now? No. I've grown. I'm 43, not 9. Life and experience have taught me some things. But that is indoctrination on all levels. At home, at school, at another church, in my social life, that's all I knew. Even when I went to do things with relatives, their life culture was centered around church as well. Like half of what we did was go to other family members' churches and sit in services that lasted so long. Oh my God. Oh my God, you want to lose a day of your life and not know what happened? Go to a black church. My God, today. Be there forever. The church we went to until I was in like 6th grade, 5th grade. They would start church at like 8 in the morning. We wouldn't leave that place until like 6 p.m. And then I had to get up and go to school next day. My school was basically a church. I'm not doing good if I'm trying to advocate for Christianity, am I? I'm not. I'm just giving my experience and why I rocks with Lorgar. We're coming back around. I haven't forgotten. But that's the kind of indoctrination I grew up with. And I don't think the people teaching me saw it as indoctrination. That's what they were taught. You teach what you were taught, and if you don't explore further, you just believe what you're taught. And that's how you keep people where you want them. Even in religious context, a lot of religious cultures don't want people to explore their religion and think other things. They want you to think what you were told and think that and do that. Don't go read that. Don't go ask those people questions. Ask me. And when I tell you to stop asking that question, just believe me and let it be there. I'll always be wary of people who don't want you to ask questions. We don't do that. And always beware of organizations that are led by one. We need a council of wisdom and elders. All right. I don't do organizations led by one person. I'm not into it. I'm not about it. Nope. 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 Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Won't do it. But that's the way I grew up. Fast forward a few years in my life, and I go to college. This is like my freshman year. I was in a speech class, and we had to write um, a speech to convince an audience of a controversial topic. And guess where I was going to college at the time? I'm not going to tell you which college, but I was going to an HBCU. I didn't know what an HBCU was. Do you know what an HBCU is? It's a historically black college or university. And the little bitty private school I grew up in, I was one of like 8 not white kids in the whole school. One of the others was my brother. I had never known um, background diversity. Not really. Most of the kids I went to school with all came from similar backgrounds. We lived in the hood. My parents sacrificed to send us to that school, and the sacrifice was a nice house. We lived in the hood. I lived in the hood going to private school. I need to write a book the more I say this. Um, and, in college, I was married to my first husband. He was 18, and he was, a tall, skinny, Caucasian young man with long, long hair down to his butt. He had the longest hair ever. And what's weird is typically people are very liberal thinking when they're young, and then they have experience and they become a little bit more conservative when they get older. I was the opposite because of my upbringing. I was extremely conservative. I mean, I was 17, 18 years old listening to Rush Limbaugh. I don't care if he's someone that you like. I'm just saying that's not someone for 17-year-olds to listen to. But that's where we were. And in the speech class, it's literally like my first class in college, and I'm 17. Remember that? I'm. Did I turn 18 yet? No, I was 17. I got married while I was in college, so I was 17. Because I didn't turn 18 till the fall, and so I look as young as it sounds like I am, and they all looked so big to me. And now college students look like babies to me. If you under 35, you look like you're 8. To me, the older you get, the younger people look. It's funny. Um, but my little 17-year-old self, these people just were frightening to me. But I was smart and I went to private school and blah, 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 blah. And the topic that I chose, please don't come through the screen at me. I'm gonna look away when I say this because I'm so ashamed. Y'all, this is what indoctrination does. The topic was the societal benefits of racial profiling. Throw your tomatoes. I was 17. I'm 43 now, would never do such a thing. Why did I think that way? Why did I think things that may be in opposition to me showing up as my best in the world? That may be in opposition to truth? Because eventually I got to a point in life where I have my own life. I've actually been on staff at a couple of churches. And let me tell you, I've done seen some things that we won't get into here or ever. Um, but as I matriculated through church culture, I started to notice things and go, I don't know about that. I know this is how I was raised, and these are the traditions that I was taught, and I'm supposed to pledge allegiance to the Bible and the Christian flag, but some of what you're telling me, I'm not sure about. But part of that raising and indoctrination is to have faith no matter what. If something's wrong in your life, it's because you didn't have enough faith. If things aren't going the way you want, it's because you didn't have enough faith. You're not believing enough. You have to just keep believing. And if you believe hard enough, then good things will happen. That's not true. But if you believe hard enough, you can change the things. If humans could change things by just thinking it, we'd have destroyed this world 100 times over by now. Most of us wouldn't exist because somebody out there thinking a thought about you that is not kind. Okay, I'd have done thought myself into a whole lot more Transformers. If that was true. Um, but that's how we were raised. That's how I was raised. And then I started examining these things to see if they were true. And when you go down that path of religious self-discovery, of understanding what you believe, why you believe it, it is a hard, painful road. I went through a season of telling people don't buy the lie. There's so many lies out there in the zeitgeist. Platitudes that sound good, but they fall short of doing anything for our lives. What is real, what is fake? What was I told to keep me subjected to a system? And who were the people that tried to teach me because they loved me? They wanted me to be better, do better, think better. How do you distinguish all of that? And that's why I rocks with Lorgar. Lorgar, where he lands, is dropped into a religious society. He is the one Primarch who lands on a world where they were already worshiping the old gods, the chaos gods, and they had all kinds of ritual in place to worship and commune with those gods. He was raised with religion in mind. I heard was it Paul Washer? There's a missionary couple of missionaries. I really love to hear them speak because they're so wise. They have so much life experience. It may have been a missionary that came to our local church, but he was talking about how, or it may have been at my old church. Actually, I can't remember where I heard this. So don't attribute it to Paul Washer. I'm not sure. Um, but there were some missionaries that when they would go to some cultures, and try to embed Christianity, that there may be things that were um, um, not jiving with the Christian culture or what the Bible says. One of them might be something like polygamy. Polygamy being, one man, multiple wives. There's polygamy, polygyny, polyamory. There's a lot of versions of the poly, but polygamy is specifically one man with multiple wives. Um, and historically, there are, cultural reasons that we won't get into here. Um, but when they would encounter those cultures, they wouldn't necessarily try to uproot polygamy. Rather than telling families that were already established and ways of doing things that were already done, while those people were converted, they continued the polygamy, but in the next generation, they would encourage them not to do that. And 2 or 3 generations later, polygamy would be gone. Where do y'all think Christmas trees came from? Anywho, Christmas trees are pagan. Y'all know that, right? Hey, look. I was worried that my braces would make my buck teeth not bucky enough, and they're still there. I'm happy. Buck teeth are cute. um, she's getting real deep today. But when you talk about Lorgar, you can't help it. Um, when Lorgar meets the Emperor, having come from a religious, indoctrinating culture, granted they were worshipping the old gods, who do exist, by the way. In the realm of 30 and 40K, they exist. These are not creatures that are unknown. But Lorgar recognizes the Emperor as his father instantly, bows the knee, and doesn't just call him the Emperor, he calls him God. And what he does is takes all of those old traditions and converts them to worship of the Emperor, because that was the best way to conquer that world and get them to worship the Emperor. Because if he had taken religion from the people altogether, that it was so ingrained in who they were and how they function. This is a society that cannot function without faith. They have to have it. It's not unlike the South. The South doesn't function without faith. The South doesn't function without church culture. If you were to take church culture out of the South, it would collapse overnight. I'm not even kidding. Like take out Chick-fil-A. Take out Chick-fil-A and Hillsong Music. It'll all collapse overnight. That wasn't nice. But it's the truth. Because that's the culture. That's how people show up in life here. From birth to family life to education to work. That's how it is. And that's what Lorgar faces with his home world when the Emperor arrives. They are having a blast out there. D&D group. Husband's D&D group. They are either faced with exterminatus or bow the knee. But when they bow the knee to the Emperor, they don't bow to him as king. They bow to him as Lord. And Lorgar takes all of their traditions and then makes them in service of worship of the Emperor, because that's what his people are used to. And Lorgar genuinely believes that his father, the Emperor, is God. And if your father's God, what does that make you? Lorgar is the one Primarch who won over more worlds through words rather than war. And honestly, the other Primarchs weren't too thrilled about that. They're like, raise the lad, bring it into compliance, drop a bomb, shoot. And he's like, no, we don't have to do that. We can talk to them. And typically what he was doing was converting them from worship of old gods to worship of the Emperor. And he kept doing it and kept doing it. He was the least successful of his brothers in bringing the world into compliance, but he also used the least amount of bullets. So measure success the way you will. But the emperor catches on that this son who's not bringing worlds into violent compliance, why don't you have to shoot anybody? Okay, Horus out here burning it down, Lorgar. White Scar's out here scarring up everything. hmm The angel is spreading his wings. Lorgar, what's going on? And he realizes that Lorgar is instituting worship in worlds. So he brings Lorgar in front of all of the other Primarchs and says, don't do this. And you, Lorgar, you do this again, smack, smack. That's the short version. You want to cause a problem with your kids, punish your least favorite kid in front of your favorite kid. You really, and especially when they were just trying to think they're doing right. Yeah, that's how you blow the world up. But Lorgar, after that, doesn't stop worshiping the emperor. He really digs it. He's like, oh, well, what do I do with all this faith that I have? Because in rejecting Lorgar's faith, he rejects Lorgar. The emperor looks at faith as a thing. He looks at it as no different than my phone or my cup here. It's just a thing. You can take this thing and put it over there and not have that thing anymore. If I take that thing and throw it out, the thing is gone. That's how the emperor looks at religion. But Lorgar looks at it as part of who he is. It's his heart, it's his blood, it's his veins, it's his lungs. It's the very breath that he breathes. And to not have faith would destroy him. That's the culture I come from. Because even if people don't really believe in God, the culture that the church has established is how we live life here. Our routines are based around it. To remove church from this part of the country would make this part of the country collapse, whether people are religious or not. It's that ingrained. It's no different to what Lorgar faces. You want me to take out the very heart of who I am. So if I can't worship you, I'm going to worship something. Because I still have all of this adulation to give. And he gives it. Where did he give it? He gives it to the dark gods. The reason this is called the first heretic is through Erebus, Lorgar fell long before any of the other Primarchs. The Emperor publicly denied his faith and loyalty, and that set his most pitiful of sons on the darkest of paths. Let's end with some reading. Boy, I spoke for a long time. I must be passionate about this topic. I can't wait to see the comments on this video. From the Horse Heresy by Aaron Dembitsky Bowden. The First Heretic, Fall to Chaos. Reading from Chapter 1. The Perfect City. False Angels. Day of Judgment. The first falling star came down in the heart of the perfect city. The crowds were always dense and boisterous in the plaza's midnight markets, yet everything fell silent when the sky wept fiery trails and the stars fell to earth in a stately drift. The crowds parted, forming a ring around the huge arrival as it came down. Only when it came closer could the people see the truth. It wasn't a star at all. It wasn't formed of fire. It was breathing it from howling engines. A smoke cloud drifted out from the downed craft, stinking of scorched oil and off-world chemicals. The ship's hull was viciously avian, a raptor's body of cobalt blue and dull gold. Its underbelly gleamed orange, bright with the hissing heat of orbital descent. Cyrene Valantion was one of the gathered crowd, and 3 weeks shy of her 18th birthday. Whispers started up around her. Whispers became chants. Chants became prayers. Jagged thunder echoed from nearby streets and plazas. The grumble of great engines and wheezing boosters, more of the stars that were not stars, came raining down from heaven. The very air rattled with the hum of so many engines. Each breath tasted the exhaust. The dark hulled emissary from the sky was emblazoned with the symbol of the holy eagle. Fire blackened from its dive through the atmosphere. Cyrene's vision twinned, blurring between what she was seeing now and what she'd seen in artistic renderings in childhood. She was far from being one of the faithful, but she knew this craft, elaborately brought to life in pictures of vibrant inks on scrolls of parchment. Such imagery was scattered throughout the scriptures, and she knew why the elders in the crowd were weeping and chanting. They recognized it too, but not merely from the holy codices. Decades ago, they'd borne witness to the same vehicles arriving from heaven. Cyrene watched as the people fell to their knees, lifting their hands to the starry skies and weeping in prayer. They have returned, one old woman was murmuring. She spared a moment from her obeisance to claw at Cyrene's flowing shawl robe. On your knees, ignorant whore! By now, the whole crowd was chanting. When the old woman reached for her leg, Cyrene shook herself free of the hag's wrinkled talon. Please don't touch me, Cyrene said. It was tradition to never touch those who wore red shawl robes without first gaining the maiden's permission. In her fervency, the old woman ignored the ancient custom. Her fingernails raked the younger woman's skin through the street's dress-thin silk. On your knees, they have returned. A Cyrene went for the Qatari knife strapped to her naked thigh. Slender, ornamental steel gleamed amber in the firelight reflected from the skycraft. Don't touch me. With a hissed curse, the old woman returned to her prayers. Cyrene took a deep breath, seeking to slow her frenetic pulse. The air heated her throat, prickling at her tongue with the charcoal spice of thruster smoke. So they had returned. The angels of the god emperor had returned to the perfect city. She didn't feel the rush of reverence, nor did she fall to her knees and thank the god emperor for his angel's second coming. Cyrene Valention stared at the vulture hull of the iron craft, while one question burned behind her eyes. They have returned, the old woman murmured again. They have returned to us. Yes, said Cyrene. But why? Movement from the craft came without warning. Thick doors clanged wide and a ramp jutted down on squealing pneumatics. Between gasp and nervous weeping, the worshipful chanting grew louder. The people intoned prayers from the word, and the last of those standing finally dropped to their knees. Cyrene was the only person left on her feet. The first of the angels stepped from the thinning smoke cloud. Cyrene stared at the figure, her eyes narrowed despite the exalted rightness of the moment. A sliver of ice wormed through her blood, as if one girl's whispered protest could possibly change what was happening. She breathed a single word. Wait. The angel's heavy armor was at immediate odds with the images from Scripture. It stood unadorned by the holy parchments that should detail its holiness in flowing script, nor was it clad in the winter gray of the god emperor's true angels. This one's armor, like the craft it emerged from, was a deep and beautiful cobalt, trimmed with bronze so polished it gleamed close to gold. Its eyes were slanted in red slits of a stoic face mask. Wait, Cyrene said again, louder this time. These are not bearers of the word. The old woman hissed at her blasphemy and spat on her bare feet. Cyrene ignored her. Her gaze never left the warrior armored in cobalt, so subtly and distinctly different from the scriptures she'd been forced to study as a child. The angel's brethren emerged from the dark interior of their landing craft and descended to the plaza. All wore armor of the same blue. All of them carried great weapons too heavy for a mortal man to lift unaided. They are not bearers of the word. She raised her voice above the chanting. Several people kneeling around her replied with harsh whispers and potent curses. Cyrene was drawing breath to call out the accusation a third time when the angels, moving in inhuman unison, raised their weapons and aimed into the crowd of worshippers. The sight stole breath from her throat. The first angel spoke, its voice deep and raw, filtered through hidden speakers in its face mask.
People of Monarchia, capital city of 4710, hear these words. We, the warriors of the Earth Legion, are oath to this moment, honor sworn to this duty. We come bearing the Emperor's decree to the 10th world, brought into compliance by the 47th expedition of humanity's Great Crusade.
All the while, a dozen angels kept their weapons aimed at the kneeling civilians. Cyrene could see the muzzles were as charred as the vulture's craft's hull, darkened from firing shells of a monstrous size.
Your compliance with the Imperium of Man has held for 61 years. With the greatest regrets, the Emperor of Mankind demands that all living souls abandon the city of Monarchia immediately. Moments ago, your planetary leaders were given the same warning. This city is to be evacuated within 6 days. On the final day, your planetary leaders will be allowed to send a single distress call.
The crowd kept silent, but their stares were now of confusion and disbelief, not reverence. As though sensing a drift in their attention, the angel aimed its weapon into the air and fired a single shot. The gunshot banged like a thunder peal, rolling around the valley storm, loud in the silence.
No one is to remain in Monarchia by dawn of the seventh day. Go now to your homes, gather your belongings, evacuate the city. Resistance will be met with bloodshed.
Where will we go? A female voice called from the transfixed crowd. This is our home. The first angel turned his weapon, aiming it directly at Cyrene. It took several seconds for the young woman to realize she'd been the one to speak. It took much less time for those near her to break and flee, leaving her in an ever expanding patch of sudden isolation. The angel repeated its words, its emotionless inflection no different from before.
No one is to remain in Monarchia by dawn of the seventh day. Go now to your homes, gather your belongings, evacuate the city. Resistance will be met with bloodshed.
This is one of my favorite books out of the series. No, I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm not trying to have the Black Larry come after me. I don't need that. I'll need that in my life. But I do encourage you, if you're looking for some good, proper military sci-fi with a lot of really great cultural overtones, because what we say about fiction, it's a great way to examine tough topics through a safe lens. Um, and I think that this book in particular does a really good job of explaining how someone so faithful can fall. Because faith that doesn't have an object, faith without an object, that's how people abandon what they truly believe in search of something that gives them that feeling that the belonging of their faith gave them. And that is the long and short answer of so many things that ill our society. I'll tell you what, Black Library, I really appreciate the good work you do. out here in these heresy streets. I still rocks with Lorgar. I really rocks with Fulgrim. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I cannot wait to see these comments. And I'll see you in the next one.